You guys, I was just sitting around doing a little bit of scrolling on X, looking for something to make me upset, I guess, because that's essentially what the website has become. And I stumble across this video, and I'm not going to play the video just yet, but we will come back to it. But after first watching this video, I was a little confused coming out of it. I was trying to figure out the difference between gender dysphoria and transgenderism. So then I looked up the definitions between the two. Transgender. A transgender person is someone whose gender identity differs from that typically associated with the sex they were assigned at birth. Some transgender people who desire medical assistance to transform from one sex to another identify as transsexual. But then I look up the definition of gender dysphoria. Gender dysphoria is a term that describes a sense of unease that a person may have because of a mismatch between their biological sex and their gender identity. This sense of unease or dissatisfaction may be so intense it can lead to depression and anxiety and have a harmful impact on daily life. Well, you would think somebody being transgender would feel some sense of unease that they have the parts that they don't want to have. They are, of course, transgender, so that would mean they would try to, push themselves towards that direction of the opposite sex. So again, I'm back to confusion because gender dysphoria is recognized in the DSM-5 as being a mental disorder, but transgenderism is not recognized as a mental disorder. But from what I've gathered so far, they seemingly are interchangeable. So what do I do next to get the answer? The logical step would be to seek the answers from the professionals. So we hop over to the professionals. So now we're here at the professionals website, the American Psychiatric Association. So if we scroll down just ever so slightly, we come to this little section. Not all transgender people suffer from gender dysphoria, and that the distinction is important to keep in mind. Gender dysphoria and or coming out as transgender can occur at any age. I don't know if you guys noticed, but they didn't explain the differences because from what I'm gathering, there is no difference. It continues to say the DSM-5-TR distinguishes between gender dysphoria in childhood for those who experience gender dysphoria before puberty. The diagnosis of gender dysphoria in adolescents and adults can occur at any age. For those who experience gender dysphoria later in life, they often report having secretly hidden their gender dysphoria feelings from others when they were younger. None of this so far explains the differences between gender dysphoria and being transgender. Just think about it for a second. If you were transgender, that means you don't want to identify as the gender you were born as. Penis, vagina, male, female. You want to go the opposite direction. So wanting to go the opposite direction because you don't feel right in the body you were born with, wouldn't that definitionally be gender dysphoria? And then in the process of dealing with that gender dysphoria, you would begin your transition. Am I right or am I wrong? I want you guys to know that I tried, okay? I looked everywhere. I cannot find anything that actually separates the differences between these two things. And my God, do not go to Reddit seeking answers to this question. I promise you, all it is a bunch of pseudo-intellectuals who just talk in circles and get actually nowhere. But then I stumbled across a video that I mentioned to you guys at the beginning of this video. So let's go ahead and hop into it and see what this lovely man has to say.
I love when I accidentally start queer discourse. Yesterday I posted a video where I talked about how frustrating it is when people misgender me as someone who presents femme the majority of the time. A lot of you pointed out how not everyone who presents femme uses she, her, or in my case, she, they pronouns, and some people who use he, him pronouns present femme regularly too, which is a great point, and it brings us to this idea of gender identity versus gender presentation. These two camps are often but not always correlated, which is why it's dangerous to make assumptions.
The reason why I make assumptions, because if you look like a man, I'm going to call you a man, and if you look like a woman, I'm going to call you a woman. It's just that simple. It's just what I see is what you get.
For example, I was assigned male at birth, and
You were assigned male at birth. Were you born with a penis and testicles? You weren't assigned a male at birth. You were born a male biologically.
most people who are assigned male at birth go on to identify as boys and men, but I realized I could not be further from that. I identify as a trans feminine person, and therefore my gender presentation is femme. Which is why I was so frustrated in that video, because people will see that I have a couple of features typical of someone who is assigned male at birth.
No, you have a lot of features that resemble a man. Let's talk about your jawline. Let's talk about the way your cheekbones are shaped. Let's talk about this awful makeup that makes you look like Mimi from the Drew Carey Show. And just from mentioning the Drew Carey Show is probably really showing my age at this point.
And then assume that they should use he, him pronouns for me. Even if it's a subconscious assumption, the action can still be quite painful. Now, in spite of a couple of characteristically male features, my gender presentation is almost always femme in the way I dress, in the way I speak, in the length of my hair, etc., which
Wait, what? When did someone's length of their hair become representative of their gender expression? I know plenty of guys who have long hair.
matches with my gender identity of a trans feminine person, hence the correlation I was talking about earlier. But as many of you pointed out, not everyone's gender identity and gender presentation correlates like that. Some people's only correlates a little bit, or some people's only correlates on certain days, or sometimes, or some people's only correlate never.
And you're trying to tell me this isn't a mental disorder. Only correlates a little bit, sometimes, or never. This is actually absurd.
All of this is to say that making assumptions about someone else's gender identity can be really harmful and hurtful to that person. So how the How are you supposed to know what to call people if you don't know their pronouns? Well, for a long time, a lot of folks, myself included, would say you should assume they pronouns if you're unsure. And I still understand a lot of the logic behind this. However, you might meet a woman, for example, who has a lot of characteristically male features like myself. And if you assume they pronouns for her, it might be really hurtful because she's a woman. She doesn't want to be seen as non-binary. So if you
Okay, first off, I don't care. If you look like a man and I called you a man and you actually are biologically a man, I don't know what to tell you. I do not want to participate in your delusions. I do not want to pretend that a mental illness is not happening right in front of me. If somebody was having a schizophrenic episode right in front of me, am I supposed to, tell them, yeah, that demon you're seeing, it's there, it's real. That's very real. That's very much happening to you right now. Actually insane.
If you're really unsure, use that person's name, which is probably going to be the most affirming thing for them to hear anyway until you get a chance to ask them, or better yet, ask a friend of theirs what pronouns they use.
Can you imagine asking somebody's friend that you're wanting to talk to, like, hey, do you know what this person's pronouns are? I cannot imagine somebody actually doing that.
Because if you take the burden off of that individual to either have to explain to you their gender identity or worse, have to correct you after you make the wrong assumption and instead do the work on your own to figure out what best validates them, it's going to make them so happy.
I think it's sad that anybody has to seek any sort of validation from a fucking stranger. So what the woke people want to tell me is the person we just watched, you guys, they don't have a mental disorder. The fuck is wrong with the world? I swear to God. We as a society, well, not me, but, as a grand scheme, have decided that these people, they need to be looked at as normal, everyday people. But I'm sorry, if you can't even understand that if you're born with one genitalia or the other genitalia, that's it. No matter what kind of hormone therapy you undergo, no matter what kind of surgery you want to put yourself through, it does not change the fact that you are either a male or you are a female. And that will only be determined by the genitalia you were born with the genetics you were born with the chromosomes you were born with. If you're one of those very few people that are a part of this camp that don't use their gender identity as their entire personality and respectfully ask that I refer to you as a female when you're biologically a male, I have no problem with that. But I do have a problem with expectations that I'm supposed to go around and ask your friends what you identify as. If you're one of those types of people, you're an absolute narcissist. I want nothing to do with you. You are a sad individual and you need psychiatric help. But then again, the American Psychiatric Association doesn't seem to know how to define things very well. But you guys, this is the video. Those are my thoughts. I want to know what you're thinking in those comments down below. And as always, do not forget to hit the like or the dislike button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you hopefully get notified every time I post a new video. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.